Right now, this very second, wherever you happen to be sitting, something is pouring through you. Not around you, through you. Through your eyes, through the backs of your hands, through your teeth and your bones, and the chair you're in, straight down through the floor and the rock, and the whole round body of the earth, and out the far side into the night. Trillions of them, trillions, every single second. And here is the part I want you to sit with before we go anywhere else. You will live your entire life, cradle to grave, and you will never once feel a single one.
And stranger than that, every one of them is telling you a small fib about what it is. It leaves the heart of the sun wearing one face, and it turns up here, at your kitchen table, wearing a different one. Same particle, new identity. Somewhere on that long fall, from the middle of a star to the middle of your chest, it quietly stopped being one kind of thing and became another kind of thing entirely.
I'm sorry, through my what? Through my eyes? There are things sleeting through my actual eyeballs by the trillion, while we sit here having a nice civilized chat and my body has just never thought to bring this up.
Not once. It never needed to. As far as you and every atom you're built from are concerned, they simply aren't there. You are, to them, a faint smudge of almost nothing that they fall straight through without so much as slowing down.
A smudge of almost nothing. That's a charming thing to hear about yourself before you've even had breakfast. So where's the river pouring from? What's actually making all of them?
The sun, mostly. A vast, steady fountain of them, pouring off it every second and washing clean over this whole side of the world. And the number is the place where your mind just quietly gives up. If I asked you to count only the ones passing through a single one of your fingernails each second, not your whole body, just one fingernail, you would be counting for longer than the universe has been alive, and you would not be finished. Through a fingernail. That is the size of the flood we're standing in, and you have never felt one, and you never will, and that gap, between the sheer enormity of the number and the total blank silence of your own body, is the very first strange thing about them. It will not be the last.
Okay, but you slid something past me just now, and I am absolutely not letting it go. You said it changes what it is on the way here, leaves home as one thing, shows up as another. That's not a particle, that's a con artist. So what is this? And how, in the name of everything, does a thing change its own identity in mid-air, with no one touching it?
That is the whole night, right there, folded into one question. The shyest object in the universe, a thing so faint it can drop clean through an entire planet and not even notice, turns out to be carrying one of the deepest surprises we have ever tripped over. And to feel why it matters, we have to go back to a crime scene. Long before anyone had ever caught one of these ghosts, the books stopped adding up.
A crime scene? Naturally, there's a crime scene. Right, walk me to it. Slowly. Start me before the ghost, before any of it.
Cast your mind back to last week. We had a nucleus, the tiny, crowded heart of an atom, and every so often, on its own private schedule, one of them would shudder and fling out an electron, and in the very act of doing that, turn into a different element altogether. The weak force reaching in, flipping one kind of thing into another. We watched it happen, and then, almost as an afterthought, I told you the weak force also coughed out a fourth little thing we'd barely named, and I hustled you straight past it.
Right, the little ghost. You gave it a wave and said, later, in that particular voice you use, where later secretly means, this is going to eat a whole episode. I assumed you were just being theatrical.
I was being theatrical. But there was a real reason to hurry past it. Because that little ghost was dreamt up, in the first place, purely to cover up a scandal. So let me lay the scandal out for you, cleanly, the way it actually landed on people, back when nobody had the faintest idea what was carrying the blame.
Go on then, what's the scandal?
When a nucleus flings out an electron like that, you can do the books on it. Energy in, energy out. Motion in, motion out. The push, the recoil, the thing we call momentum, in and out. And these aren't tidy little housekeeping rules. These are the deepest laws we have. Whatever you start with, you end with. Nothing gets created out of nowhere. Nothing quietly slips away. Not ever.
The conservation laws. Yes, that's the one drum you have been banging all season long. Energy is never made and never destroyed. Momentum, the same. Those are the laws you do not, under any circumstances whatsoever, get to break.
You don't. They are about as close to sacred as anything in physics gets. So here's the setup, and it's a beautifully tidy one. When only two things fly apart from a decay, those laws lock the whole business down completely. Picture the nucleus sitting perfectly still, and then it throws out an electron. And if there are only two pieces afterwards, the electron and the heavier leftover, then the way the payout splits between them is utterly fixed. Nailed shut. The electron has to come away carrying one particular amount of energy. The very same amount. Every single time you run it.
Why fixed, though? Why can't it come out however it likes?
Because two pieces flying apart from something that was sitting still have almost no freedom left. They have to go in opposite directions. The books demand it, or the motion wouldn't balance. And once the directions are pinned, the split of the energy is pinned right along with them. It's like an inheritance divided between exactly two heirs, with a will so strict there's only one legal way to carve it. There's no wiggle room at all. The books permit precisely one answer.
Fine, so you do the experiment. You gather up a big pile of these flung-out electrons, you check what each one is carrying, and they all come out holding that one fixed amount. Bookkeeping satisfied, everybody home for tea. So, where's the crime?
That is exactly the thing. They don't. You gather them up, and they come out holding all sorts of different amounts. A few carry nearly that fixed share. Most carry less. Some limp out with almost nothing at all. A whole smeared-out range, running from nearly the full amount all the way down to barely a whisker. When the books had sworn blind, hand over heart, that there was only ever one allowed answer.
Hang on. So the electrons are coming out short, underpaid. Most of them turn up carrying less energy than the rules flatly insist they must have.
Underpaid. That's a lovely way to hold it. And the missing share isn't some rounding error dribbling off the edge. Sometimes the great bulk of the energy is simply gone. Not there. And it isn't only the energy that's short. The motion doesn't tally either. The direction, the recoil, the momentum. You add up what actually flew out, and it doesn't match what you started with. You put a certain amount in, you get less back out. Again and again and again.
And you said the motion goes missing too, not only the energy. That's almost the part that clinches it for me. Spell that half out.
Gladly. It's the tighter screw of the two, if anything. When just two things fly apart from something that was sitting still, they have to kick back against each other in a dead straight line. One goes this way, the other goes exactly the opposite way, and the two shoves cancel out to nothing, the way it all began as nothing. Perfectly balanced. But go and catch the electron and the heavy leftover and measure which way each one actually went. And their kicks don't line up. They don't cancel. There's a leftover shove aimed off in some direction that nothing you can see accounts for. So it isn't only that the energy comes up short, the very direction of things comes out wrong. Something unseen went flying off precisely that way to settle the recoil. Two separate laws, both quietly broken, both pointing at the very same missing guest.
Okay, that genuinely unsettles me, and I think I can feel why you've gone quiet about it. Because there are only two ways out of that room, aren't there? And I don't much fancy either of them.
Say them out loud. I want to hear you weigh how bad they both are.
Either the great sacred rule, the one you have told me 100 times can never ever break, is just broken. Energy genuinely leaks out of the universe and vanishes into nothing at all. Or something is leaving that room that we simply cannot see, and it is strolling out the back door with the missing money stuffed in its pockets, and we have never once caught it doing it.
Those are precisely the two doors, and neither one has a friendly handle on it. One door says the deepest law in all of physics is quietly a lie. The other door says there's a burglar loose in the building that no instrument has ever laid eyes on. And you should know, for a good while, some very serious people were genuinely ready to walk through the first door, to shrug and say, well, perhaps down at this level, energy just isn't perfectly saved after all. Perhaps the sacred rule has a small hole worn in it.
They were genuinely prepared to burn the whole house down rather than believe in a burglar they couldn't photograph.
They were. That's how airtight the case looked from where they stood. The missing energy was right there in the numbers, plain as daylight, and the burglar was nowhere at all. Not a footprint, not a thread. And that is the exact moment where one person flatly refused to blink.
This is your whitelist moment, isn't it? I can hear it coming a mile off. Who?
Pauli. And what Pauli did was take the second door, the burglar nobody could find, and describe the burglar in exact detail, before a single living soul had ever seen him. He said, all right, let's not tear up the law. Let's suppose, instead, that there's a third thing flying out of that decay, something we've been missing this entire time. And here is precisely what it would have to be like for us to have missed it so completely.
Go on, build me the suspect, feature by feature.
It carries no electric charge, so there's no handle to grab it by, nothing at all for our instruments to hook onto. It weighs almost nothing, and it feels almost none of the forces, which means it slides straight through every detector we own without leaving so much as a scratch on the glass. And it is carrying off exactly the missing share, the energy and the motion, the momentum, the whole balance, and then it simply leaves, out the back, unseen. Books restored to the penny.
So he conjured the perfect culprit, invisible, weightless, uncatchable, and it took precisely the amount that was missing, no more, no less. Isn't that a touch convenient? Don't fret, everyone. The vanished money was taken by a ghost that can't be photographed, won't leave prints, and has already left the country.
It is completely, outrageously suspicious. And here is the part I love the most. Paulie knew it. He wasn't smug. He wasn't taking any kind of victory lap. He was appalled at himself. He had rescued the law, yes, but he'd done it by inventing a particle so shy, so untouchable, that he was fairly sure nobody would ever be able to corner one and prove him right. He had patched the universe with something he suspected might stay unprovable forever. And he all but apologized for it.
Apologized? For solving the whole problem?
There's this wonderful confession of his, and it runs roughly, I have done a terrible thing. I have invented a particle that cannot be detected. Sit with that for a second. You save the deepest law in physics, and you walk away sick about it, because the price of the rescue was a ghost you're half certain no one can ever catch. A fix you can't check. A rescue with no receipt.
That is the most relatable thing a physicist has ever said. I've fixed it. I hate my fix. Please, for the love of God, nobody look at my fix too closely. I would follow this man into battle.
And I think you can feel why he was so uneasy. A theory that leans on something you can never see is barely a theory at all. It's a story. He'd bought back the law, but he'd paid for it with an article of faith, and he knew the difference better than anyone.
And yet he still did it. He still bet on the invisible burglar over the broken law.
He still bet on it, because to him the alternative was worse. Giving up the conservation of energy wasn't tidying up one messy experiment, it was pulling a thread that runs through the whole of physics. Everything is stitched to those books. He would rather gamble on a particle he couldn't prove than watch the entire fabric start to unravel. That's the size of the stakes he felt.
And the name? Did the ghost have a name yet, or was it just the thing that must be there?
The name that eventually stuck to his little suspect was almost tender, almost sheepish. It means, roughly, the little neutral one. No charge, barely any weight, desperately, chronically faint. The little neutral one slipped into the room to smuggle the balance out the back so the accounts could add up again.
The little neutral one. So the neutrino, this whole thing, was dreamt into being purely to save the accounts. It's a plug, a patch. Something has to be carrying the missing bit, so let's name the something, tick the box, and move on with our lives.
A patch to save the sacred books, offered up with an apology attached to it. That is exactly what it was, at the very beginning. A desperate, rather elegant guess. But watch how much the guess buys you the instant you're willing to allow it. Drop one shy, unseen carrier into that room, and the electron's whole smeared range suddenly makes perfect sense. Because now there are 3 pieces splitting the payout, not 2. And 3 pieces can carve up the pot 1,000 different ways.
Ah, because with 3 heirs instead of 2, the strict little will goes out the window.
Out the window entirely. Sometimes the electron grabs most of it. Sometimes the ghost runs off with the lion's share. Every possible split shows up, right across that smeared range. The mystery of the underpaid electrons is explained. The books balance again, to the penny. You only have to be willing to believe in something you cannot see.
And for years, that was the whole of it. Just a convenient thing to believe. A promissory note the universe hadn't got round to paying out yet.
For years. A particle proposed, named, quietly believed in by the people who badly needed it to be there, and never once seen by anyone. Everyone half hoping the apologizing man had been right, and no earthly way to know for certain. An IOU pinned to the wall, gathering dust.
So how in the world do you go hunting for a thing that was practically defined by being impossible to find? Where do you even start?
You start by really understanding why it's so hard. Because the reason it's so hard is the whole character of the thing. Think about what it hasn't got. It has no electric charge. So the electric grip, the force that catches very nearly everything, the thing that makes solid matter feel solid, that stops your hand sailing straight through the tabletop, that grip has nothing whatsoever to hold on to here. And it doesn't feel the powerful force that binds the nucleus together either. It feels only the weakest of the forces, the very one that made it in the first place. And that weak force can barely reach across a single particle before it flickers out.
So to this thing, solid matter isn't solid at all.
To this thing, solid matter is very nearly pure emptiness. A vast, airy nothing with a scattering of impossibly tiny targets floating in it, spaced so absurdly far apart that our ghost almost never drifts near a single one. Here, picture firing one straight into a slab of solid lead, and not a brick of lead, a wall of it, and ask yourself, how far would it have to travel through solid, unbroken metal before it stood a fair chance of striking anything at all? The answer isn't a few paces, it isn't a few miles, it isn't a few thousand miles. It's light years of solid lead to have a decent shot at stopping just one.
Light years of lead. That is not a shield, that is an entire galaxy built out of a fishing weight. There isn't that much lead in the universe. You could melt down 1,000 worlds and not come close.
You couldn't come near it, which is exactly why they pour through absolutely everything as though the everything simply weren't in the way. Right now, from the sun, a flood of them is raining down onto the daylit face of the earth, sifting through the air, through the roofs, through the walls, through people, down through solid bedrock, clean through the entire body of the planet and out the underside into the space beneath your feet. And the whole Earth, to them, might as well be a soap bubble hanging in the light.
The whole Earth. Not a lot of the Earth, the whole thing, as if it were nothing.
The whole thing, as if it were nothing. Trillions through your body every second. In the little while it's taken me to say this one sentence, a number you genuinely cannot picture has passed clean through you, and every last one of them left you completely, perfectly untouched. Didn't warm a hair, didn't nudge an atom, just fell through you like you were a patch of open sky.
And I felt nothing. I feel nothing right now. There's a river going through me, a river the size of a number I can't even hold in my head, pouring through me without a pause. And my body's entire report on the matter is a blank, total shrug.
A blank, total shrug. To you, they aren't there, and to them, you aren't there either. Two things sharing the very same patch of space at the very same instant, each politely, permanently carrying on as though the other one simply didn't exist.
All right, but now I've landed on a problem. And I think it's the same problem that must have haunted Pauli all those years. If this thing sails through a light year of lead without a scratch, if it drops through an entire planet and doesn't even notice, then how could anybody ever catch one? Doesn't that just prove his fear stone cold right? It really is uncatchable.
And now we arrive at the single most important word of the whole night. Almost. It almost never touches anything, and almost never is not never. Once in a very, very great while, one of them does clip something. One of them, out of that unthinkable flood, happens to score a direct hit on one of those tiny scattered targets and leaves behind a tiny flash. A signature.
So it isn't zero, it's just absurdly, punishingly, almost comically rare.
Absurdly rare, but not zero. And that little gap between absurdly rare and flatly never is where the entire game lives. Because that gap hands you a strategy. Any single ghost almost never hits. Fine, granted. So don't chase a single ghost, gather an enormous crowd of targets instead, and then simply wait. Build a tank, a truly vast one, buried deep underground where nothing else can reach down and muddle the count. Fill it with something clear and still, and then watch it, patiently, in the dark. Any one ghost won't oblige you, but run trillions upon trillions of them through a big enough tank for long enough. And now and then, a flash. One ghost, out of a silent ocean of them, has finally clipped something, right there where you're looking.
And that flash is the ghost, at long last, signing its name.
That flash is the apologizing man being proven right, long after he had made his private peace with never finding out. They built the giant tank. They sank it deep and sat in the dark and waited. And the little flashes came. The ghost was real. It had been streaming through every one of us the entire time, and finally, once in a great while, one of them knocked and was heard.
But hang on, how do you even know that little flash is a ghost, and not just the tank hiccuping, some stray something or other drifting up out of the rock?
Ah, that's the whole reason you bury the tank so brutally deep. All the ordinary clutter of the world, the stray bits and pieces raining down from the sky and seeping up out of the ground, gets soaked away by the mile of solid rock piled overhead before it can ever reach you. Almost nothing survives the trip down. Almost nothing, except the ghost, which of course strolls straight through a mile of rock without the faintest notion it's even there. So down in that dark, the ghost is very nearly the only thing left in the whole world that can make a flash. And here's the part that ought to raise the hair on your neck. The flashes point. Trace them back to where they came from, and they lead you, over and over, to one single place in the sky. The sun. That buried tank, sitting in the black in the dead of night, is quietly watching the sun, by its ghosts, straight down through the entire solid body of the Earth.
Oh, I love that. He said you'll never catch it. And the answer wasn't to get cleverer and grab one. The answer was to sit in the dark in front of 1,000,000,000,000 of them and let one, entirely on its own, catch itself. That's gorgeous. Patience simply outlasting the impossible.
Patience and sheer weight of numbers. You cannot corner a single ghost. It'll fall straight through your trap and your hand and your whole laboratory and out into the night. But you can stand very still for a very long time in front of a very great many of them and let the rarest event in the world happen all by itself, exactly where you finally set your eyes.
So, we've got the ghost. Predicted, named, apologized for, and at long last actually caught. One shy little particle. No charge, barely any weight, sliding through worlds like they're made of fog. I feel like I can finally hold a proper picture of it in my head. Is that the whole animal? Is that the ghost? Complete?
Almost. There's one small complication I've been quietly sitting on this entire time, and I've been sitting on it precisely because it's about to swallow the whole story. It isn't one ghost, there are three.
Three. Three separate ghosts?
Three kinds of the same shy particle. Think back to the electron, good old dependable electron, the one that carries the electricity, the one riding in every atom you've ever touched. It turns out the electron has two heavier cousins. Same basic character, much heavier, and so unstable that they flicker into being and wink straight back out almost the instant they're made. But real and fully paid up members of the family.
Heavier cousins of the electron? Okay, and what have they got to do with the ghost?
Each of those three, the plain electron and its two heavier cousins, comes with its own kind of ghost riding alongside it. Its own flavor of neutrino. One ghost that partners the electron and one for each of the two cousins.
Flavor, there's that word again. The one from last week, the kind tag. The label that tells you which type of thing you're actually looking at.
The very same word. Three flavors of ghost. And for tonight, you don't need the cousins' names, and you don't need their habits. You need one single fact, and I need you to bolt it right down, because absolutely everything from here on turns on it. There is not one kind of neutrino. There are three. Three genuinely different ways for a ghost to be.
Three kinds, bolted down. Although I can't help noticing you've now said, this is about to matter enormously, in one voice or another, about 3 separate times, wearing the exact expression of a man palming a card at the table.
I'm absolutely palming a card. Keep tight hold of the three. Now, let's go and stare at the sun.
The sun, which is where this whole flood of ghosts is pouring out of to begin with.
Where they are born by the truly unthinkable number. Deep in the core of the sun, in the furnace where it forges its light, it also forges these ghosts. Floods of them, streaming out in every direction at once. And unlike the light, which takes an absolute age to claw and stumble its way out to the surface, the ghosts leave on the instant. Straight out through the sun's own vast body and away across space. No trouble at all. Because of course, to them, even the sun is barely there.
So we've actually got a fire hose of these things aimed permanently at us from the sky.
A permanent fire hose. And here's a thing we can actually do with it. We understand that furnace well enough to work out, roughly, how many ghosts it simply must be making. We can see how brightly the sun burns, and from that brightness, we can reckon out how thick the flood of ghosts pouring off it has to be.
So you've got a predicted head count. This many should be leaving the sun, so this many should come sleeting down through the tank.
A predicted flood, worked backwards from the light. And then you build the tank, and you sink it in the dark, and you wait, and you count the little flashes as they come. And the count comes back wrong. Not a hair wrong, badly, glaringly wrong. You catch far too few. Only a fraction of the ghosts you were promised ever turn up. The great bulk of them, most of the whole flood, are simply not there.
Missing. The ghosts are going missing somewhere between the sun and the tank.
Missing. And now you've got a proper headache on your hands because there are only a few ways to read a shortfall like that, and not one of them is comfortable. Maybe we've badly misjudged the sun. Maybe the furnace doesn't run the way we think it does, and it's quietly making fewer ghosts than the light lets on. Maybe our sums are simply off somewhere. Or maybe the ghosts really are leaving the sun in the full flood we predicted. And then something happens to them, out there in the long, dark crossing, so that only some of them ever arrive.
And I'm going to guess this one did not get tidied away in a single afternoon.
For a long, long stretch, it just hung there, unresolved. The missing sun ghosts. You would count and keep coming up short, and nobody could say with any real certainty whether the fault lay in the star, or in the tank, or in the arithmetic, or somewhere nobody had yet thought to look. A stubborn, nagging, embarrassing shortfall, year after year after year. Where on earth were the rest of them?
All right, you've got that palmed card practically glowing between your fingers now. The 3. You told me to keep tight hold of the 3. This is the moment it pays out, isn't it?
This is the moment it pays out. Here's the thing nobody was watching for. The missing ghosts were never missing. Not a single one of them was lost. They left the sun in exactly the flood we'd predicted. Every last one present at departure, roll fully called. But on the long way here, they did the thing I told you about in the very first breath of tonight. They changed.
Changed. Changed how? Changed into what exactly?
Into the other flavors. Remember, 3 kinds. A ghost is born deep in the sun as one particular flavor, the electrons kind. But a neutrino will not hold still as the thing it started out being. As it flies, it slowly shifts. It slides out of one flavor and towards another, and on towards the third, and then it drifts back again. A slow wave of identity, sloshing between all 3 kinds, the whole long way across space.
So the ghost that left the sun as the electron's flavor
Is, by the time it reaches your tank, quite likely to be wearing one of the other 2 instead.
So it's not one thing merely pretending to be 3, it is genuinely, actually turning into the others. In mid-flight, it leaves as flavor 1, and then somewhere out in the empty dark, with nothing touching it, nothing pushing it, without so much as a by your leave, it just drifts into flavor 2.
Sloshes between all 3, over and over the entire journey. And now, the tanks. The counters we had built to begin with were tuned to catch one flavor, and one flavor only. The sun's flavor. The kind the ghost is born as. That was the sole kind those early tanks could even see. So whenever a ghost swapped costume out on the crossing and arrived wearing a different flavor, it sailed straight through the counter, unseen and uncounted. Not because it was gone, because it was in disguise.
Oh, that is wonderful. The ghosts weren't missing at all. We were standing at the door with a single photograph of a single face, turning away everyone who didn't match it, while the very same crowd strolled past us over and over in different coats. They were all there, every one of them. We just kept failing, again and again, to recognize them.
Every single one of them was there, the whole time. Nothing had been lost. Nothing had leaked out of the star. Our sums about the furnace had been right all along. The ghosts had simply changed on the way, and our net had only the one flavor-shaped hole cut in it. Learn to count all 3 flavors as they come in. Build a net with all 3 holes, and the full flood is right there. Every ghost the sun ever promised, present and accounted for, down to the last.
And this changing has a name, I take it. It always does.
It has a name, We call it oscillation, the slow sloshing of a neutrino back and forth between its three kinds as it flies.
Sloshing. Give me the picture properly because I'm imagining something frantic. Is it fast? Flickering back and forth like mad the whole way here?
Slow, stately, almost graceful. Picture a long, lazy ocean swell rather than a flickering strobe. The flavour welling up in one kind, ebbing away, rising again in the next, all of it playing out across staggering gulfs of distance. And that very slowness is itself telling you something if you'll listen to it. A ghost only swings appreciably from one kind towards another across an enormous stretch of space. So the plain fact that they've changed so much by the time they reach us is quietly reporting back just how unthinkably long the crossing from the sun really is. Long enough for that gentlest of tides to turn right the way over. Nothing about it is hurried. It's a slow wave of identity, rolling over and over the whole silent way here. And it only manages the trick at all because the journey is so vast and the ghost so endlessly patient.
Okay, that is a real relief and a real chill at the very same time, and I don't quite know where to put my face. Nothing was lost. Wonderful, marvellous. The sun's off the hook. But the reason nothing was lost is that a particle changes what it fundamentally is while it's merely commuting. And that's the part I cannot get comfortable with.
And you shouldn't get comfortable with it. Hold on tight to exactly that discomfort, the churn in your stomach right now, because it is about to turn into the single deepest thing we say all night.
Right, out with it then. Why is a shape-shifting ghost anything more than a spectacularly good party trick?
Because the shifting is a fingerprint. It doesn't merely tell you that the ghost changes. It forces the ghost to confess something about itself that it could never otherwise be made to say out loud. And to feel it, I have to march you straight back to the speed limit. That one rule you are never, ever allowed to bend.
The speed of light. The wall nothing gets past. Yes.
That's the one. And here's the piece of it we need. Anything with no weight at all, nothing, dead zero mass, is nailed to a single speed. Light's speed, the fastest there is. A weightless thing doesn't travel at light speed as some kind of choice or an achievement it worked up to. It has no other option available to it whatsoever. It cannot go slower. That is the rule Einstein handed us, and it does not haggle.
Right. Massless means flat out, always, no exceptions, at the speed of light, never a whisker slower.
And here is the strange, heavy thing that rule drags in behind it. For anything moving at light's own speed, time does not pass. Not slowly, not at all. A thing travelling at exactly light speed experiences no passage of time whatsoever. Nothing about it ages, nothing ticks, nothing can change, because change needs some time to happen inside, some before and some after, and for that thing there simply is none. It's frozen, mid-stride, for all time.
Nothing changes, because for a weightless thing, there is no time in which the changing could even take place. There's no later for it to change into.
There is no later for it. Now put the two halves together, slowly, and feel where it goes. We have just spent this whole stretch of the night watching a neutrino change, slosh from one flavour into another over the course of its journey across space. It changed, which means, for that neutrino, time did pass on the way. It ticked, it aged. Something inside it evolved as it flew.
But a weightless thing gets no passing time at all, you just said. It can't change, ever.
It can't. So this ghost, plainly, is not doing light speed. It's going a whisker slower. And there is only one kind of thing in all the universe that is allowed to travel slower than light.
Something with weight. Something with mass.
Something with mass. And so the shapeshift, the disguise, the sloshing between flavours, the party trick you wanted to wave away a minute ago, is a proof, read from a very great distance, that the neutrino weighs something. It has mass, not zero, tiny but not nothing. We never once had to lay one on a scale. We watched it change on the way here, and the changing alone told us, with no room left to argue, that it must weigh something, because a thing of pure, perfect zero weight could never have changed at all. It would have arrived exactly, frozenly, as it left.
So we found out this ghost has weight, not by weighing it, but by catching it doing something that a weightless thing is strictly, absolutely forbidden from ever doing.
That is exactly it, and it's the whole beating heart of the night. A crime it could only possibly have committed if it had mass, and it committed that crime in full public view, all the way from the sun to the tank, over and over, for anyone patient enough to sit and watch. The oscillation is the confession. Weigh nothing, and you're stuck at light speed, frozen, unchanging for all time. This thing changed. Therefore this thing weighs something. There is no other way to read the evidence.
Let me test it straight back at you, because I want to be sure I've actually got this and haven't just been nodding along to be polite. If the neutrino truly had zero weight, properly none, real nothing, then a ghost that left the sun as the electron's flavor would arrive as the electron's flavor every single time. No disguise, no shortfall. The tanks would have counted the full flood from the very first day.
You've got it, exactly and completely. Zero weight means it arrives precisely as it left, forever and always, and there would never have been a single missing ghost to lie awake puzzling over. The gap in the count and the weight of the ghost are the very same fact, wearing two different coats. And it isn't only the sun that tells us this either. We can make ghosts of our own, closer to home, watch them across a good long run, and catch them red-handed at the very same trick, setting out as one flavor and arriving, some fair share of them, as another. The same confession taken down a second time by a second road entirely. The shapeshift is real, and the weight it forces onto us is every bit as real.
And underneath the lovely logic, is there actual machinery down there? Some reason why a scrap of weight should let it shift, when having none would lock it solid?
There's real machinery, and I'll give you the shape of it without dragging all the scaffolding in. Those three flavors aren't quite the neutrino's most basic, innermost selves. Underneath the flavors, the thing that actually flies is more like a blend. Think of it as a chord, three notes sounded together at once. And each of those three underlying notes carries a very slightly different weight from the others.
A chord, okay. And what does travelling do to a chord?
As the ghost travels, those slightly differently weighted notes each keep very slightly different time. They drift, gradually, out of step with one another. And the shifting chord you hear when it arrives at the far end is a different flavor from the one that set out. But, and here's the whole hinge of it, that only works if the notes weigh different amounts. Set every note's weight to zero, and now every note keeps identical time. Nothing drifts out of step. The chord holds dead steady, and the flavor never changes for the entire trip.
So the fact that it changes flavour is really the sound of three tiny, slightly different weights slowly falling out of step with each other. And if there were no weights at all, there'd be nothing to fall out of step, just one flat note held the whole way here.
One flat note, held flat the whole way. The music only happens because the weights disagree with one another, and they can only disagree if they are actually there to begin with. No weights, no disagreement. No disagreement, no shift. The shifting itself is the tiny weights quietly arguing.
I have a strong feeling this landed on somebody's desk like a dropped brick. That the ghost, of all the particles, has weight.
It landed like a bomb, because of what it walked into. We still have, a reigning picture of all the particles and all the forces. The most successful theory anyone has ever built. A thing that predicts the behavior of the world to a degree that is frankly hard to believe. And inside that picture, right from the very start, the neutrino's weight was written down as exactly 0. Not small. Not, we're not quite sure, pencil in something tiny for now. 0. Flat, clean, deliberate, load-bearing 0. It was baked into the foundations.
So the theory didn't merely leave the weight as an open blank to fill in later. It committed. It planted a flag and said, "This particular thing weighs precisely nothing. Full stop. End of discussion."
It committed entirely. And then the shyest, faintest, most apologetic particle in the whole zoo, the one nobody could catch, the one that was practically a shrug of embarrassment on the day it was born, quietly shuffled up to the most successful theory we had ever written down, and pointed one thin finger at the single spot where it was wrong. The neutrino has weight. The theory had insisted, in writing, that it couldn't. Nature had scrawled a correction in the margin of our very best book.
And there's something almost funny about which particle got to do it. Not some colossus we had to build a machine the size of a city to conjure into being. The ghost, the one that barely turns up at all, that's the one that caught the grand theory out.
The faintest thing we know of handed the theory its first real surprise. And I want to be careful with you right here, because it would be far too easy to oversell this. We did not tear the theory down. It is still magnificent, still right about very nearly everything it touches, still the finest thing of its kind we've got. What the ghost did was expose one clean, confident assumption that turned out to be false, and force a patch onto it. And there's a loose thread hanging off that patch, which we're going to pull much later this season, that these weights had to be stitched in by hand afterwards, and nobody is fully sure yet why they come out the peculiar way they do.
But why would anyone write down a flat, confident 0 in the first place? That seems like a bold thing to simply assume. Why not leave it blank and wait and see?
Because at the time, 0 was the tidy choice, the one that asked no awkward questions and made no mess anywhere. The theory had a neat, particular slot for handing the heavier particles their weight, and the neutrino, built the way it was built, just didn't fit into that slot at all. So the cleanest, most graceful move was to say it simply had none. Not out of laziness, mind, it genuinely looked like the simplest and most elegant answer going, and elegant answers have a way of seducing everyone in the room at once. Nature, as it turned out, was not quite so tidy-minded. It had gone and slipped the ghost a whisper of weight by some other route, a route we are, to this very day, still chasing down. So the flat 0 was never a blunder. It was a beautiful assumption that the universe, quietly, declined to honor.
So how much does it actually weigh then? Now that we know it weighs anything at all, give me the number. Or, the word I know the house rules by now.
And this is exactly where I have to level with you about the edges of what we know, because those edges are a good deal closer than you'd ever expect. The weights are almost unimaginably small, staggeringly light, so far below the weight of a single electron, and bear in mind the electron is already a featherweight, one of the lightest little specks in the whole collection, that it becomes genuinely hard to hold the comparison steady in your head at all. A wisp of a thing.
A wisp of a wisp. But you do know that much, at least. You know for certain that it's tiny.
We know that much. But here is where it actually stands, and I want to be careful about it. What we've truly pinned down, cleanly, solidly, is that the three underlying weights are different from one another. We know the gaps between them far, far better than we know the weights themselves. We can hear the three notes disagree. We are still working out how heavy each single note is on its own.
So you can hear that they differ, but you can't yet read off the actual weight of any one of them.
Not fully, not yet. We know they can't all be 0. The sloshing guarantees that much. We know that all of them are fantastically, almost absurdly light. And the full picture, the exact weights, and one or two other things this ghost may still be quietly hiding, is not settled. It's open, genuinely open, right now, tonight, out at the living edge of what anyone has worked out.
So where it really stands is, we know it weighs something, we know it's feather light beyond any picturing, we know the three inner weights differ from one another, and past that, the ghost is still keeping a couple of its secrets firmly to itself.
Still keeping them, which is a rare and rather lovely thing to be able to say out loud. That here, in the most poked at, most examined layer of reality we have ever managed to reach, there's a spot where the map still just reads, "We don't know yet." The shyest particle in all of nature turned out to be one of the very last ones still holding cards face down.
You keep hinting there's more than just the weight that it's hiding. Go on then. What else is the ghost quietly sitting on?
Fair. And I'll only gesture at these because they're genuinely unsettled, right out at the ragged edge. There's a real question of whether the ghost might, in some deep sense, be its very own mirror opposite, its own anti-version rolled into the one particle, which is a thing no other member of the family could ever claim. There's the puzzle of why the three weights sit exactly where they sit and not somewhere else entirely. And there's a quiet suspicion, held by careful people, that this shy little nothing of a particle may have had a hand in the very biggest question there is, why the universe ended up made of something at all, rather than nothing whatsoever. None of that is settled. I raise it only so you can feel how much room is still standing wide open behind that one faint little face. We cracked the shapeshift. We are nowhere near the bottom of the ghost.
Okay, I walked in here mildly worried about things going through my eyeballs, and I am walking out with a ghost that rescued the laws of physics, shapeshifts its way clean across the sky, and caught our finest theory in a plain, flat lie. That is an enormous amount of trouble for one shy little particle to stir up.
It carried far more than its own weight, which, given its weight, was never going to be a demanding bar to clear. But look at what actually held the whole night together, underneath every single twist. The smeared electron, the invented ghost, the missing sun count, the shapeshift, the weight that shouldn't have been there. Through all of it, one thing never once wobbled. The books. Energy in, energy out. Momentum in, momentum out. We bent over backwards, we dreamt up a whole new particle out of thin air, rather than let those books fail by so much as a single hair.
That's true, actually, now you line it up. Every crisis tonight was secretly the very same crisis. The accounts have to balance. And every rescue was secretly the very same rescue. Make the accounts balance again. Even the ghost, in the end, was really just a way of keeping the ledger straight.
So here's the question I want to leave hanging in the air over you. The deepest one we've asked all season, and next week it is the entire hour. We keep saying these laws can never break. Energy saved, momentum saved. The books must balance. But why? Where does a rule like that even come from? Who signed it into being? Why is the universe so utterly, fanatically obsessed with keeping its own accounts?
You know, I've genuinely never once thought to ask. I've just taken the book's balance as a given, as furniture, as the floor under everything. Where would a law like that even come from?
From somewhere astonishing. And here's the part that stops me in my tracks every single time. The very same idea that tells you why the books must balance also tells you where the forces themselves come from. One single thought, and out of it drops both at once. The reason nothing can ever go missing, and the reason there is any push or pull anywhere in the world at all.
Wait, the forces too? The reason there's gravity and electricity, any of it, that comes out of the same place as the reason energy isn't allowed to vanish?
The very same place. two of the biggest questions in all of physics, and one answer sitting quietly underneath the both of them. It's called symmetry, and it is the closest thing I know to the secret hiding at the bottom of everything. That is next week.
Then that is exactly where I'll be. The reason the books must balance and the place the forces are born. Next time, symmetry.